Hello, how are you today? I bet that you're just dying for a story. Something interesting to pass your time. Well, you're in luck. I think I have the perfect story just for you. A story of adventure, of friendship, of the trials and tribulations of life. A coming-of-age story of someone just starting to come into their own. And a story of otherworldly excitement. Like all stories, this one has a protagonist, one who, at the moment, doesn't realize the wondrous and sometimes terrifying things and events that are about to unfold within their lives. We begin our story in a bedroom. A small bedroom in a cramped apartment, with everything that you'd expect to find in a bedroom. A bed, 4 walls, a small closet, a dresser adorned with pictures and little knickknacks from the person's life. This particular dresser tended to be covered with a variety of different makeups, pieces of jewelry, scattered pictures of friends, all hung along a mirror that attached to it. The rest of the room looked as if it were hit by a tornado. As you paid attention, you could see clothes scattered about everywhere, most of which usually tended to fall within the range of blacks and reds. Lining the wall were pictures of a girl. This girl, of course, the centerpiece of our story today. A girl with long curly red hair, usually standing beside her mother or one of her very few friends. A few posters of bands that were generally seen as somewhat emo or emotional. She tended to like dour music. There in the room, as the sun began to arise, an alarm clock begins to ring. As the chime goes off, filling the room with a dreadful racket, someone begins to stir on the bed, tossing and turning underneath the covers, beginning to make groaning sounds out of frustration before the blankets lift up, revealing a young girl with red hair, which was currently a mess, as she awoke, throwing a pillow at the alarm clock on the dresser, knocking it off and to the floor, but, of course, not stopping its ringing. She said. It's too early. Stupid alarm clock. I wish I could throw it into the recycling bin, she said, finally beginning to crawl her way out of bed, picking up the alarm clock and finally silencing it, putting it back on the dresser, and yawning as she stretched out for the morning. Yes, today was beginning like any other day, at least as far as Rosa Greenwood was concerned. As she got up, she began to mill about, starting to complete her daily rituals of cleanliness, hygiene, and readiness for the day, slowly beginning to drag from her dresser a number of unfolded clothes that were unceremoniously packed inside. Once again, a mixture of blacks, reds, and other dark colors. She got dressed, of course, today deciding to go with an unusual choice of shirts, as it was one of the few shirts that she hadn't worn yet. She did need to do some laundry. She decided to put on her Metal Knuckles shirt. It wasn't her favorite band, but they weren't bad. After which, she began heading to the bathroom to start her morning hygiene rituals. She began taking a shower, after which she began brushing her teeth, trying to comb her hair out to prevent as many kinks as possible. Her hair did tend to get wild if it wasn't properly kept up. She often found herself wishing that her hair was as easy to maintain as some of the other girls at her school. She probably should be happy. Today is her 16th birthday. But for whatever reason, primarily being that it just wasn't in her character. She tended not to be overexcited about anything. After finishing brushing her teeth, she began one of the most important rituals of her day, the taking of her many medications. She was often upset, frustrated with her body, as she had a myriad of medical conditions, which required her to take lots of different medications. No matter what it was, it always seemed there was something wrong with her physiology. Like her body just didn't want to be like all the other girls. I mean, surely she looked normal. She was fairly pretty, at least she thought so. And her body seemed to be developing like the other girls, with a few differences, most of which she didn't like to talk about. Primarily being that, to this day, she has yet to receive her womanly time of the month that all the other girls talk about quite frequently. She often thinks about how unpleasant it is. I mean, they describe it as such a burden, an inconvenience really. And yet, she knows if she were to tell others that she hasn't gotten hers, there would undoubtedly be ridicule. People who would make fun of her difference. Add that into her myriad of other medical conditions, primarily a number of nutritional problems. Her body failing to absorb certain types of nutrition, at least properly, meant that she had to take lots of medications, as well as eat much more than other girls her age. She usually had to pack lots of extra snacks and eat them throughout the day, primarily beef jerky sticks. Those were her favorite. But as she finished taking her medications for the day and began to exit the room, already beginning to smell her mother's breakfast pancakes, which were always on Wednesdays. It was one of her favorites. She always made bacon with it. Lots of bacon, which happened to be her favorite meat. But as she walked out of the bathroom, she was suddenly stricken with a strange sensation, a sort of lightheadedness that she hadn't experienced before, even with her numerous medical conditions. And just as it began to fade, she started to feel a pain, a mixture of a stabbing sensation, along with a general burning, all stemming from her back, at the very center, right below her shoulder blades. And this pain was not in the least mild. It was so intense that for a moment she began to shout out. "Ah!" she said as she collapsed to the ground for a moment, trying to reach back to her back and see why it was hurting. It was difficult to reach, but as she did, she noticed something that wasn't there before. She could feel a protrusion, a very large lump in the center of her back. This lump seemed to be the source of her pain. For a few moments she was in a panic, terrified at what this little lump might be. She already had so many things wrong with her, and now this? She thought to herself as she rushed back into the bathroom, lifting up her shirt and trying to stare at her back in the mirror. There she could clearly see the lump. At this point it was nearly the size of a baseball, and still there was that burning, stabbing pain. And as she stared at it in the mirror, the most terrifying thing that she has ever experienced happened. She began to see that little baseball-sized lump not only growing, but it appeared to be shifting around, moving slightly underneath her skin. It maintained its position, but it almost seemed like there were veins or some other type of long, vein-like objects underneath her skin, beginning to move around, and she could feel them moving underneath her skin. In that instant, she let out an earth-shattering scream. She screamed so loud that there was no doubt that anyone in the apartment complex would have heard it. She screamed bloody terror and began to call out for her mother. "Mom! Something's wrong! Call the doctor!" she shouted in a panic, tears in her eyes as she couldn't stop looking at this strange thing on her back. What was it? Was it going to kill her? Did she have some sort of parasite? What was happening? She couldn't tell. The only thing that she could really experience was fear. Fear that, for all the things that she had suffered through, all the medications that she had to take, all the ridicule that she had to endure, that her life was going to end without ever really getting a chance to live it in the first place.